Hey guys, tonight we're starting in the Wild West. Dim the lights, maybe put on a little background hum. And if you're enjoying these long rides back in time, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe. I'm always curious where you're tuning in from. So let me know in the comments what time it is where you are. Nothing makes me smile more than hearing that people are drifting off to these stories all around the world. All right? Saddle up because you just woke up somewhere you really don't belong. Your eyes blink open to a weak beam of sunlight cutting through the gaps in the wall of a rough wooden bunkhouse. The boards are warped, half rotten in places, nailed together without much care, and every gust of prairie wind whistles straight through the cracks like a chorus of ghosts. You're not in your memory foam mattress, not in the safe hum of central heating. You're lying on a straw tick. That's basically a bag full of straw someone stitched shut and called a mattress. At first you think it's just lumpy. Then it crackles when you move, sharp little stalks poking through the fabric. And then, oh, there it is, you feel a tickle across your ankle. That's not straw. That's a bedbug making its morning commute. Welcome to the West, partner. The air inside the bunkhouse hits you first. It's heavy, stale, a stew of wood smoke that never quite leaves the boards, whiskey spilled years ago into the floorboards, and the musky tang of old leather tack hung on pegs along the walls. Men have come and gone, slept, sweated, spit tobacco, and tracked in dust for years, and the place smells like every single one of them is still here. Your throat feels dry, coated, as if you've spent the night inhaling sawdust. And in a way, you have. You push yourself up, elbows sinking into the scratchy blanket someone tossed over you. The fabric is so coarse it feels more like a horse blanket than anything you'd want touching your skin. The chill of the morning hasn't left yet. Out on the plains, nights don't care if the day was blazing hot. They drop sharp and hard, and inside this drafty shack you feel every bit of it. Your breath fogs faintly in the weak light, which means the temperature dipped into freezing last night. You're shivering, though part of that is the realization of where you are. Then you hear it. Spurs clinking. Somebody's already up and moving around outside, the jingle carrying through the thin walls. A horse nickers. Farther away, the dry squeak of a windmill turning slow in the morning breeze. And over everything, that breeze itself a dry whisper slipping through the gaps in the planks, carrying the smell of dust and sagebrush. You can actually taste the grit on your tongue. No bottled spring water here, no filtered HVAC, just dust, sun, and whatever the prairie decides to give you. You swing your legs over the edge of the bunk, and your boots hit dirt. Not a floorboard, not even stone, just packed earth tamped down by 1,000 footsteps. It's uneven, gritty, with dark stains in patches you don't want to investigate. Every step grinds a little cloud of dust that never really settles. The whole place feels temporary, like it could collapse in the next hard wind. Which, honestly, it might. Your clothes are stiff, coarse wool that doesn't want to bend where your body bends. You slept in them, because no sane person would strip down in a bunkhouse like this. Not when nights dip below freezing and strangers are wandering in and out at all hours. You tug at your shirt, and it feels like wearing sandpaper. Your boots, cracked at the seams, already pinch your toes. This is the kind of outfit designed not for comfort, but for survival. Layers to block wind, leather to keep out thorns, thick fabric to endure being scraped against wood, rock, or another man's fist. The sounds outside get louder: boots on the boardwalk, a cough hacking up yesterday's dust, a screen door slamming. The town is waking up. Or maybe it never really slept. Boomtowns don't keep quiet hours. Miners are stumbling home from all-night saloons while ranch hands are rising for dawn chores. A mix of drunks and sober men, all sharing the same street, all armed with something sharp or loud. You already feel out of place, too soft, too slow, too clean, even though you smell like you've been marinating in smoke and sweat all night. You push open the bunkhouse door and sunlight slaps you across the eyes. Not the soft, filtered kind. This is frontier sunlight, raw and unforgiving, bouncing off every pale board, every dust mote, every piece of tin nailed to a roof. It blinds you, sears your eyelids, and forces you to squint until your head aches. And that's when you realize the taste of grit in your mouth isn't just imagination. Dust rides the air here like a second atmosphere. Every inhale coats your tongue with something dry, alkaline, metallic. The street in front of you is wide, unpaved, more ruts than road. Wagons have carved grooves so deep they look permanent, and each new wheel just digs them deeper. Mud clings in spots where water spilled yesterday, already dried at the edges, already buzzing with flies. Horses shuffle, heads low, tails flicking constantly against the cloud of insects that follows them like smoke. Their dung litters the street, drying in the sun, crumbling into the very dust you're now breathing in. The town smells like it. Manure, sweat, whiskey, tobacco, and underneath it all, the iron tang of hot dust. You hear voices low, tense, quick, a deal being struck, or maybe an argument about to break out. A dog barks sharp and insistent, then yelps and shuts up. The saloon doors flap once, twice, then still again, leaving only the sound of the piano inside. It's not playing a lively tune, just a slow, halting practice scale, like the pianist is waking up too. And there you are, standing in it. No toothbrush, no shower, no clean socks. Just you, itchy wool, cracked boots, bedbugs hitching a ride in your clothes, and a sun that feels like it's already watching you, daring you to last until noon. You haven't even made it 5 minutes outside that bunkhouse, and you're already tired, already thirsty, already wondering how people did this every single day. The truth is, most of them barely did. They aged faster, wore down harder, and died younger than you could imagine. Their beds were straw, their air was grit, their mornings started with cold, stale beans and ended who knows how. For you, waking up here is a novelty. For them, it was survival. And survival out here was never guaranteed. So when you wake in this world, your eyes full of dust, your lungs full of grit, your skin crawling from the straw tick, you're not just uncomfortable, you're already in danger, because the West doesn't wait for you to adjust. It doesn't care if you're soft, if you're thirsty, if you're dreaming of air conditioning and clean sheets. The West wakes up rough, and if you can't match it, you push out of the bunkhouse and the day hits you like a slap. The light is harsh, the kind that doesn't caress so much as interrogate, bouncing off every pale wall and tin roof in the town. Your boots crunch down onto the boardwalk and you're immediately grateful for it, because just beyond the edge is a street that looks more like a livestock pen than a proper road. It isn't paved. It isn't even really levelled. It's just a wide, churned stretch of dirt that last night's rain has turned into ankle-deep muck. Every wagon wheel that rolled through dug fresh ruts, each rut filling with brown water and the unmistakable smell of manure. Horses, cattle, mules, they've all left their calling cards, and now it's mixed into a soup that steams faintly in the morning sun. The boardwalk beneath your feet is no grand escape either. The planks are warped and splintering, nailed down by whichever carpenter was sober enough at the time, leaving gaps wide enough to see the muck glistening beneath. Every step makes the boards creak and groan, as though they resent the weight. Nails stick up just enough to snag a boot sole, and the whole walkway sways under the combined steps of townsfolk bustling along it. Women lifting their skirts high enough to clear the mess, men stomping along in mud-crusted boots, a few children darting in and out between them, chased off with curses. Out on the street, freight wagons groan by underloads that look impossible. Barrels stacked high, lumber lashed down with fraying rope. Crates marked with promises of supplies from Street, Louis or San Francisco. The drivers sit slouched on their benches, whips in hand, hollering at teams of horses that look half-starved and half-mad from the weight. Iron-rimmed wheels squeal against the ruts, spraying mud and manure in arcs that hit anyone unlucky enough to be walking too close. And plenty of folks are unlucky. You see pigs rooting through trash at the edge of the street, tails twitching, snouts buried in piles of yesterday's refuse. This is the town garbage disposal service. Swine nosing through old vegetable peelings, cigar stubs, spoiled meat, and things you'd rather not identify. Dogs weave in and out too, half wild, ribs showing, eyes sharp for scraps. They bark at one another, lunge, snap, and scatter, setting off a chorus of sound that blends with the creak of wagon wheels, the clatter of hooves, and the endless murmur of human voices. Everywhere you look, someone's carrying something heavy. A woman grips a bucket of water so large you wonder how her arms don't give out. A man staggers under a sack of flour nearly as big as his torso. Miners in rough shirts shuffle by with picks slung over their shoulders, faces already streaked with dirt, though the day's barely begun. Cowboys lead horses loaded with saddles, coils of rope, bedrolls, everything they need strapped onto the only creature they can trust more than themselves. It's a town of constant hauling, constant shifting, constant straining. Nothing is light. Not the cargo, not the labour, not even the conversations. You hear them short, sharp exchanges on the boardwalk, muttered words in the alleys, people carrying grudges as much as they carry supplies. Someone spits into the muck below with a kind of practised spite. Another man pauses in his walk just to glare at someone across the street, his hand brushing against the butt of the revolver at his hip. Nobody calls it out, nobody intervenes. This is normal. The air feels charged, like a storm waiting to break. But it's only breakfast time. Out here, every day starts with tension and ends with someone nursing a bruise, or worse. The smells come at you in waves. First, the wet rot of manure-soaked mud, then the sour bite of whiskey seeping out the swinging doors of the saloon across the street. The tang of tobacco smoke as a man on the boardwalk lights up, flicking his match straight down into the street where it sizzles in a puddle. Then there's the sharper smell of iron and sweat drifting from the blacksmith's shed, his hammer ringing steady on hot metal, a constant heartbeat for the town. Mixed with it all is the faint sweetness of baking bread from somewhere down the block, and the heavier, greasier scent of frying lard where someone's already selling breakfast off a skillet. None of it covers the manure. That smell is the bass note in the whole orchestra. You take a step further down the boardwalk, careful not to catch your toe on the warped planks. Two men shove past you without apology, their shoulders knocking yours hard enough to rattle your teeth. You mutter something, but they're already gone, moving quick, their hats low, eyes forward. Everyone here seems to be in a rush, but it's not the clean hurry of modern commuters. It's a desperate scramble, a kind of constant half-run to keep up with, whatever work or gamble or trouble is waiting for them. A wagon lurches suddenly as its wheel catches a rut, tilting its load dangerously to one side. A barrel tumbles off, hits the mud with a heavy splash and splits open. Flour bursts upward in a white cloud, settling instantly into the muck, turning into a paste right before your eyes. The driver curses loudly enough to turn heads, slapping the reins while a pair of men run out from a nearby store to salvage what they can. People laugh, others shake their heads, but nobody really helps. The loss is the driver's, not the town's. Everyone has their own burdens to carry. Somewhere farther up the street, you hear a gunshot. Just one, loud and sharp, then silence. Nobody panics. Nobody screams. A few heads turn, eyes narrowing, and then the rhythm of the morning resumes. Out here, a gunshot is punctuation. It means something ended. Maybe an argument, maybe a life, maybe just a drunk firing into the air. Either way, it isn't unusual enough to stop the flow of wagons and footsteps. You keep walking, and the muck below seems to thicken. A mule stumbles into the street, dragging a cart so overloaded with firewood you think it might collapse. The driver yells, curses, jerks at the reins, but the mule's hooves are already sinking into the slurry. It heaves, pulls, finally drags the load free with a sound like suction. The crowd cheers half-heartedly, then goes back to its business. Another small crisis solved. Another reminder that the line between stuck and moving, between surviving and sinking, is razor thin out here. As the morning stretches, the boardwalk fills with more bodies. Women sweeping the entrances to their boarding houses, shopkeepers rolling barrels to their doors, a preacher calling out invitations to a service that half the crowd ignores. Dust swirls up now as the muck starts drying in the sun, coating every surface in a fine brown powder. It sticks to your boots, to your clothes, to your skin. When you lick your lips, it's there too, gritty between your teeth. The town isn't just around you, it's on you, seeping in through every pore. By now, you realize something important. This place doesn't give you space. Not in the bunkhouse, not on the boardwalk, not in the street. Everywhere you turn, someone is shoving, spitting, dragging, hauling, or glaring. The noise never stops, the smells never ease, and the sense of danger never lets go. And you've only been awake for an hour. You've made it out of the bunkhouse alive, but surviving even this so-called ordinary morning feels like running a gauntlet. Out here, the Wild West isn't a stage for legends. It's mud and manure and misery, and it eats comfort alive before breakfast is even over. You glance down at yourself and realize the day hasn't even really begun, because out here you're not properly in the game until you've fought your way into the uniform of survival. Forget about style. The Wild West doesn't care about style. What it demands is layers of fabric thick enough to outlast thorn bushes, campfires, and the occasional stray bullet. The wool shirt comes first, rough to the touch, scratchier than anything you'd ever willingly put against your skin. You tug it over your head, and it drags like sandpaper across your shoulders. Wool is hot in the sun, heavy when wet, and itches in a way that feels less like clothing and more like punishment. But it's durable, and durability is all that matters. Beneath the wool you've got long underwear, the infamous union suit. It buttons up the front and back, clinging to you like a second skin made entirely of irritation. The fabric holds yesterday's sweat the way a sponge holds dishwater, and no amount of tugging seems to settle it comfortably. Within minutes you're scratching at your arms, at your legs, and discovering that modesty here comes at the cost of feeling like you're wearing burlap dipped in nettles. They say long underwear was practical. It wicked sweat. it insulated, but to you it feels more like a moral lesson stitched in cotton. Comfort is weakness, and weakness will get you killed. Next come the trousers, heavy denim or rough canvas. They don't bend so much as creak, stiff enough to stand on their own if you let them. Denim in this era is thick, untreated, nothing like the soft jeans folded on shelves in your time. These pants feel like armour, stiff and unyielding, held up by suspenders that cut into your shoulders. Sit wrong and the seams grind against you. Stand too long and they trap heat until your thighs feel roasted. But denim survives barbed wire, saddle leather, and days of crawling in dust, so you wear it. Everyone does. Then there are the boots. Tall leather riding boots, stiff and unbroken. You jam your feet into them and immediately feel the pinch at your toes, the rub at your heel. Within an hour of walking, blisters bloom like unwelcome flowers. The leather doesn't care that you're soft. It will harden you or it will bleed you, and either way you'll learn. The soles clomp heavy on the boardwalk, good for stomping, not so good for comfort. They're waterproof in theory, but in practice the seams let mud creep in, soaking your socks until your toes squelch. You don't own sneakers here. You don't even dream of them. Out here, your boots are your only chance of crossing terrain that wants you dead. The spurs are next, and they're less glamorous than legend suggests. They strap awkwardly to the heels of your boots, jangling with every step. They're meant for nudging your horse, but in practice they snag on boardwalk edges, trip you in saloon doorways, and clatter in a way that makes stealth impossible. You can't creep in spurs. Everyone hears you coming, even if you're just crossing the room to sit down. They're an accessory that screams to the world, "Here I am, clumsy and armed." And then comes the duster, the long canvas coat, meant to protect you from dust, wind, and rain. You shrug it on and instantly feel its weight. It flaps in the breeze like a sail, catches dust like a collector's jar, and drapes down to your boots, turning you into a moving curtain of grit. Every gust of wind slaps it against your legs. Every passing wagon coats it in another layer of dirt. The moment you sit down indoors, it marks you out as the one who's just tramped through the storm. The duster doesn't keep the dust off you. It simply relocates it, carrying it into every room like a travelling souvenir. You're less a man in a coat and more a broom in human form. The hat is your crown, but it isn't stylish, it's survival. A wide-brimmed felt sombrero or a Stetson, stiff and heavy, pressing down on your head until you feel the band line carved into your forehead. It shields your eyes from the sun, yes, but it also soaks up sweat until it smells like an old horse blanket. A gust of wind lifts it easily if you don't keep a hand on it, and losing your hat out here isn't just embarrassing, it's dangerous. That brim is your only shade, your only shield against sunstroke, so you clamp it on and live with the constant ache of pressure and heat. By now you're dressed, and you already feel exhausted. Every piece rubs, scrapes, weighs, and pinches. None of it was tailored for comfort. Everything was made to last longer than you, to stand up to weeks of wear without washing, to hold together in storms and scrapes. You walk stiff, shoulders hunched, as though armoured in cloth and leather, which you are. And yet, underneath it all, you're sweating, scratching, and slowly realising why the people in old photographs always look so grim. They weren't just posing seriously, they were itchy, overheated, blistered, and half buried in their own dust. You take a few steps down the boardwalk, your boots heavy, your duster trailing, spurs jangling. A horse shifts nearby, ears flicking, and you realise even the animal is better dressed than you. Its coat shines, its saddle is oiled, its tack solid. You're clumsy in comparison, lumbering under the weight of your own gear. The sun beats down, sweat rolls beneath the wool, and the dust from your own coat drifts up into your nose. You sneeze, and the sound earns you a glance from a man sitting on a barrel nearby. He smirks, spits tobacco into the street, and shakes his head like he's just seen another greenhorn fail at being dressed for the West. And in a way, he's right. Because here's the truth, the West doesn't care how you look. Nobody here cares if your boots shine or your shirt is new. What they care about is whether your clothes will still be holding together after 3 weeks in the saddle. Whether your duster will turn rain instead of soaking it. Whether your hat will keep the sun from frying your brain. Comfort is a luxury, style a joke. Function is the only measure. And you're already failing. The boots have raised raw spots on your heels. The wool shirt scratches at your neck. The underwear clings damp against your back. Your duster, instead of protecting you, has turned you into a walking dustpan. And it's still morning. You've barely moved more than a block from the bunkhouse. Imagine another 10 miles on horseback, or a storm rolling in, or a saloon fight breaking out. These clothes aren't helping you, they're testing you. Every single piece of fabric is a reminder that in this place, survival comes with friction, weight, and misery stitched into every seam. And that's why, before you've even made it to breakfast, you're already sweating, sore, and half miserable. You thought putting on clothes would make you feel ready to face the day. Instead, the day is already beating you, and your outfit, this so-called armor of the frontier, isn't protecting you. It's slowly wearing you down, the way the West does to everyone who dares to step into it. You step into the mess hall, if you can call it that. It's less a dining room and more a room with a table, maybe a few benches, the floor half covered in sawdust meant to soak up spills that happened months ago. The air inside is hotter than outside because someone's been stoking a stove since before dawn. A firebox glows, irons sizzling with grease, smoke curling out from a crooked chimney that coughs it back in half the time. The smell is unmistakable: burnt coffee, stale beans, salt meat fried until it's as tough as old leather. It isn't inviting, but your stomach doesn't care. You're hungry, and hunger trumps taste. The coffee comes first. Always the coffee. It's poured from a dented tin pot blackened by 100 fires. The liquid that sloshes into your tin cup isn't so much a beverage as an event. It's thick, dark as tar, and carries the faint crunch of grounds that never fully settled. You bring it to your lips, and the first sip sears your tongue. The second coats your teeth in bitterness so strong you swear your enamel will peel. By the third you're wincing, but you're also awake. This coffee isn't brewed to taste good, it's brewed to kickstart bodies that have to survive 16-hour days in the saddle or down a mine. Some say you could patch a barn door with the dregs. Others say it's strong enough to float a horseshoe. Both might be true. Next come the beans. You can tell by the way they slump onto your plate that these aren't fresh. They were cooked yesterday, or maybe the day before, and reheated in the same pot that's been used for weeks without a proper scrubbing. They taste of smoke, salt, and iron. The skins are wrinkled, the inside's mushy, but they fill the belly, and that's all that matters. Someone ladles you a scoop with a shrug that says, "It's food, don't complain." You chew fast, because beans like these aren't meant to be savoured. They're meant to occupy stomach space so you don't collapse halfway through the day. If you're lucky, you get salt pork. A strip slapped down on your plate, glistening with grease. It looks inviting until you try to cut it and realise it has the consistency of a boot sole. The first bite is all salt that puckers your mouth, salt that makes you thirstier than you were before. The second bite is gristle. By the third, you stop thinking about taste entirely and just chew because your body is begging for calories. Out here, meat doesn't come in juicy cuts or delicate servings. It comes preserved, dried, salted within an inch of its life. Anything that doesn't spoil too quickly, anything that fills the gut. Around you, men eat in silence, heads bent low over tin plates. There's no leisurely conversation, no lingering over coffee, no warm laughter, just chewing, swallowing, and moving on. Some shovel food into their mouths like they're racing the clock. Others gnaw mechanically, eyes already on the door, minds on the work waiting for them. A few cough into their sleeves, phlegm rattling, but nobody pauses to check if they're sick. Out here, sickness is a constant background noise. Unless someone collapses, you eat and move on. Flies swarm the room, big, lazy flies that circle the grease pan, then land on your beans if you pause too long between bites. You swipe at them with your fork, but they return almost instantly, drawn by the smell of salt, pork and coffee grounds. They crawl along the rim of your cup, dip into your plate, and buzz in your ears. You chew faster, less to finish than to stay ahead of the infestation. Out here, food isn't just for you. It's for whatever can get to it first. The stove hisses as another pan hits the iron. Grease pops, a sharp crackle that leaps at your wrist and stings. You flinch, but nobody else reacts. Out here, burns, blisters, cuts, they're all part of the morning. Pain doesn't stop anyone. It just gets folded into the day like another ingredient. You keep eating, jaw aching from the effort, throat dry from the salt. The coffee doesn't help. It hydrates nothing, just layers another bitterness on top of the dryness. But without it, you'd feel even worse. So you drink, and you let it scald its way down. Every once in a while you catch someone looking up from their plate, eyes narrow, jaw tense. Out here, even breakfast carries an edge. Maybe someone lost at cards last night. Maybe someone bumped into someone else in the saloon. Maybe someone suspects the man next to him of stealing a horse or shorting a payment. Whatever it is, grudges don't pause for meals. They simmer alongside the beans, waiting for a spark. You chew your pork, keep your head down, and remind yourself not to stare. You finish your plate and realize you aren't satisfied. Your stomach is full, but there's no pleasure in it. Just wait. You wipe your mouth on the back of your sleeve because there aren't napkins here, just sleeves and grit. You drain the last of your coffee, wincing again as grounds catch between your teeth. And then you stand, sore from sitting on a bench that's more splinter than wood. Outside the mess hall, the day is already in motion. Wagons roll, horses stamp, men shout, and the air tastes like dust again. The food didn't give you strength so much as it gave you ballast, enough to weigh you down so you won't blow away in the prairie wind, enough to stagger you through the next 12 hours of labour, whether that's in the saddle, in the mines, or behind a bar. And as you lick the last film of grease from your teeth, you realise why they call this breakfast of regret. Because it doesn't comfort, it doesn't refresh, it doesn't make you glad to be alive. It simply reminds you that life here is endurance. Every bite is another reminder that you're not eating for joy. You're eating to survive. The flies don't wait for you to linger. They're already back at the plates, swarming the remains. The cook dumps another pot of beans onto the stove, stirs with a blackened spoon, and wipes sweat from his brow with the back of his hand. The cycle continues. Tomorrow's breakfast will taste exactly the same. Bitter coffee, tired beans, salted meat that makes your throat ache. and tomorrow you'll shovel it down again. Because out here, the West doesn't care about your taste buds. It cares whether you can keep moving, and this food, miserable as it is, keeps you moving. You step back into the sun, your stomach heavy, your mouth dry, and the taste of burnt coffee lingering on your tongue. A horse neighs. Someone shouts. The day has begun, and breakfast is already forgotten, replaced by the next burden waiting to crush you. Out here, you don't get meals. You get fuel, and it never tastes like enough. You step out into the dry morning, and your lips are already cracking. The salt pork has sucked the moisture out of your body like a sponge wrung dry, and the coffee hasn't helped. It's left your tongue feeling like it's been sanded. Instinct makes you want to reach for a cup of clear, cold water, the kind you take for granted back home. But here, that cup could kill you. The first option is the well. Every town has one, dug deep into the hard earth, lined with stone, and crowned with a bucket and rope that creaks with every pull. On the surface, it looks promising. You lower the bucket, hear the splash far below, and crank it back up with your arms aching from the effort. The water sloshes over the rim, cool and inviting. But the moment you dip a cup and take a swallow, you taste it. A mineral tang, bitter and chalky, sliding down your throat like liquid stone. It doesn't refresh, it clings. You can feel it settle in your stomach like gravel. And there's always the question of what's swimming in it. Wells out here aren't sealed. Dust, dung, dead animals, all of it can end up in the groundwater. People tell stories of whole towns struck with cholera after one unlucky cow wandered too close, or after someone tossed refuse in without thinking. You don't have microscopes, you don't have filters, you don't even have bleach. You have a choice. Drink the well water and risk spending the next day bent double in agony, or stay thirsty and hope you can hold out until something cleaner comes along. Most people drink and pray. If the well fails, there's the river. You walk down to the bank, and at first it looks alive. Sun glints on the ripples, trees lean over with their roots dipping into the current, and you imagine plunging your whole face in and drinking until your belly is full. But one look closer, and you hesitate. The river carries everything. Upstream there's a camp, maybe a mine, maybe a herd of cattle driven right through the water. All that waste, all that filth, comes drifting downstream to you. You cup a handful, drink, and it tastes of mud and something metallic. Hours later your stomach cramps, sweat breaks out on your brow, and you know you've swallowed more than water. The river's a gamble, and more often than not, it wins. Out here they whisper about poison water. Springs that look clear, bubbling bright from the ground, but which hide a deadly trick. The soil in parts of the frontier is laced with alkali, salts that dissolve into the water until it becomes a chemical brew. It looks pure, but the moment it hits your tongue it burns, bitter and foul. Drink enough and it strips your insides raw. Travellers collapse on the trail, lips foaming, bellies distended, victims of the very thing they thought would save them. Horses shy away from it instinctively. But men, desperate and thirsty, too often drink first and realize too late. So people carry canteens, old dented things strapped to their belts, filled whenever they find a source that hasn't yet betrayed them. But canteens run dry fast. The sun beats down, pulling sweat from your skin until your shirt clings heavy, your hat brim soaked, and still your mouth desert dry. You take cautious sips, measuring ounces against miles, knowing every swallow is one less you'll have when the trail stretches longer than you expected. Some days men ration themselves so tightly their lips split before they'll risk finishing the canteen. And if you misjudge, if the spring you are banking on turns out to be alkali poison or bone dry, then your body becomes the warning sign for the next poor soul. You pass through towns where markers dot the graves. Some read cholera. Some read nothing at all. So many deaths came fast and ugly from the water. You don't think about it when you drink from your tap at home. Here, every sip is a spin of the wheel. A good day, you quench your thirst and move on. A bad day, you've just swallowed the seeds of your own ending. Children are the most vulnerable. One gulp from the wrong pail and they're gone by nightfall. Families who survived the dust and the hunger still bury little ones because the water turned traitor. And adults aren't safe either. Grown men collapse in the middle of work, miners doubled over in the shafts, cowhands falling off their saddles, ranchers crawling on hands and knees towards shade that won't save them. Dehydration doesn't forgive mistakes. Out here, your body runs out of moisture faster than you believe possible. Sweat drains, breath hisses out, lips shrivel, and before you know it, your muscles are seizing. The irony is cruel. You can be standing beside a river wide enough to drown in and still die of thirst because it's fouled beyond use. You can kneel by a spring bubbling crystal clear and still end your life with a single sip. You can spend days searching for water only to find a trickle that tastes so vile you gag, but drink it anyway because your body won't let you refuse. Every story of the frontier is stitched with water, or the lack of it. Men shot each other not for gold, not for cattle, but for access to one good well. Wells were fortunes, springs were treasures, and every glass could hide a knife in the dark. You remember the coffee from breakfast, thick and bitter. That was safe because the boiling killed what it could, but it didn't hydrate. All it did was buy you time. Out here, even the act of boiling isn't guaranteed. Fires burn out, wood is scarce, pots leak. Sometimes you drink what you find because you have no other choice, knowing full well you're gambling with your life. And all around you the land mocks you. Dry creek beds split open like scars, cracked mud curling in the heat. Dust storms whip past, scouring your skin, stealing what little sweat remains. The sun presses down, merciless, turning your vision blurry, your headlight. You dream of ice, of fountains, of cool glass jars, but those dreams don't exist here. Here, the water is always questionable, always dangerous, always tainted with the possibility of death. By midday, you're parched again, lips split, throat raw. Someone offers you a dipper from a bucket drawn that morning. You hesitate. The water looks cloudy, a thin film swirling on top. Your body screams yes. Your mind says no. You lift it to your lips anyway, because out here hesitation is its own kind of death. And as you swallow, the bitter tang coats your tongue, and you wonder if this will be the drink that saves you for another day, or the one that ends you before nightfall. That's the truth of the West. The guns, the dust, the storms, they all take lives. But the water? The water decides more fates than any outlaw ever did. And as you set the empty dipper back on the bucket, your stomach already uneasy, you realize survival out here isn't about what you eat, or how fast you draw, or how tough your boots are. It's about what you dare to drink. You've had your breakfast of regret, you've swallowed water that might kill you, and you've pulled on itchy, blister-making clothes. But none of it matters if the weather decides it's your turn to lose, because out here, the weather isn't background. The weather is the villain. By noon, the town feels like the inside of an oven. The sky is a pitiless blue. Not a cloud anywhere, and the sun hangs directly overhead, glaring down with no shade to hide under. Tin roofs throw back the light in blinding sheets. Boardwalks radiate heat through the soles of your already pinched boots, and every step feels like walking on a griddle. The air itself moves like a furnace blast, hot wind licking the sweat from your face before it can cool you. You squint against the brightness, but your eyelids don't help. The sun slices right through, searing, relentless. You thought you were dressed heavy for the morning chill. Now your wool shirt and denim trousers are prison walls trapping heat against your body, cooking you alive. You're a pot roast wrapped in canvas, slow baked by a merciless prairie sun. Your hat brim keeps the worst of it from frying your eyes, but it also traps heat around your head until you feel your brain swimming. Sweat runs down your back, slick and uncomfortable, and the long underwear clings like wet rags. The duster you thought would protect you from the elements, now it feels like wearing a curtain made of molten sand. You're roasting from the outside in, and just when you think it can't get worse, the dust devils arrive. At first you see a shimmer at the edge of town, a twist of motion in the shimmering horizon. Then it's on you, hot air spinning, sand and grit spiraling upward in a thin, furious column. It whips across the street, scattering trash, lifting skirts, pelting your face with invisible knives. You clamp your eyes shut, spit grit from your teeth, and curse the very idea of air. The dust devil doesn't last long, but it doesn't have to. Your eyes burn, your mouth grinds with sand, your skin is raw, as though you've been scrubbed with sandpaper. And you know another will come, and another after that. Tiny. A tornado's made not of water, but of the very dirt you breathe. You stagger into what little shade exists, maybe the narrow awning of a general store, and for a moment you think you'll find relief. But the shade is only a darker kind of heat, still air that stifles instead of soothes. Your shirt clings tighter, your chest heaves. You'd kill for a breeze, until you remember the breeze carries sand sharp enough to strip paint. The choice is suffocate in still air, or be scoured in moving air. Either way, the West makes you pay. Then, just as suddenly as the heat rules, the evening decides to overthrow it. You feel it first as a drop in the air, a shiver crawling up your damp spine. The sun slides lower, the shadows stretch, and the furnace that roasted you all day turns into a freezer the moment the light fades. The same dry air that baked you now pulls every ounce of warmth from your body. Sweat that soaked your shirt an hour ago chills against your skin like ice water poured down your back. The wool that scratched and smothered at noon now feels like it isn't enough. Your teeth chatter, your fingers stiffen, and the boots that burned your toes are suddenly too cold to feel. By nightfall, you're shaking, wishing you had blankets, wishing you had fire. But the firewood is scarce, and the air is too thin to hold heat. You realize then that you packed the wrong century of clothing. You've got layers, sure, but none designed for a land that can turn from blazing to freezing in a single day. Out here, the temperature swings 30-40 degrees without warning. Noon cooks, midnight kills. There's no balance, there's only extremes. And if you think the weather can't get meaner, you haven't seen the storms. They come without warning. The horizon darkens, a bruise spreading across the sky, and then the wind roars. Clouds boil, lightning forks down, thunder rattles your bones. Rain slams the town in sheets, turning dust to sludge in minutes. The street becomes a river of brown soup, wagon ruts filling until they're knee-deep traps. Horses flounder, pigs squeal, men curse and stumble as the boardwalks sag and creak under the sudden weight of water. Everything you own, from your boots to your duster, is instantly soaked, heavy as lead, dripping down your back in cold rivulets. The rain doesn't cleanse, it corrodes. It churns manure into slurry, splashes filth up your legs, seeps into your food, and breeds sickness. The town stinks worse after the storm than before. The flies come back in swarms, fatter, hungrier, louder. And when the clouds break and the sun returns, it doesn't dry the mud so much as bake it, trapping the smell under a crust until the next storm comes to stir it again. You realize then the weather isn't just inconvenient, it's a predator. It waits, it stalks, and it strikes when you're weakest. You shiver through the night, remembering the noon that nearly cooked you alive. You sweat through the noon, remembering the midnight that nearly froze you stiff. You stumble through the storms, wondering if the dust will blind you before the rain drowns you. And through it all, you know one thing: this isn't a backdrop. This isn't scenery. The weather itself is the villain. And you? You're just the fool who stepped into its story without the right armor. So, when the next morning comes and the sun rises bright again, you don't celebrate, you brace. Because in this world, every sunrise is another round of the same fight. And you know, deep down, you'll lose eventually. Nobody beats the weather. The West sees to that. You've survived the weather, somehow. But now it's time to deal with the one creature standing between you and a long walk into nowhere. Your horse. You wake sore, your body stiff from yesterday's sun and dust, and you shuffle toward the hitching post. The horse is waiting, ears flicking, tail swishing at flies. At first glance, it looks steady enough. 4 legs, strong back, a pair of eyes that watch you with suspicion. But don't mistake it for a pet. Out here, a horse is your life, your lifeline to water, to food, to town, to survival. And if you don't respect it, it becomes your liability. The first lesson you learn comes with the saddle. You drag it up, the weight of leather and iron nearly pulling your arms out of their sockets, and heave it over the horse's back. Already the animal shifts, rolling its eyes, shifting its hooves, making sure you know that this isn't its idea of fun. You fumble with the cinch strap, threading it under the belly, pulling it snug. But here's the catch. Snug isn't enough. Too loose, and the moment you swing a leg over, the whole thing will slip sideways. You'll be flat on your back in the dirt with hooves flashing above you. Too tight, and the horse will blow out its ribs in protest, puffing up until you think the strap is firm, only to exhale once you climb aboard, leaving you dangling off-centre like laundry on a line. The knot matters. Get it wrong, and you get launched. And then there are the sores. Not yours yet, the horse's. If you don't brush out the dust before saddling, or if the blanket underneath shifts wrong, it rubs raw spots on the animal's skin. Those sores get worse with every mile. A sore-backed horse turns sour, bucking, refusing to move, or collapsing altogether. And once your horse goes lame, so do you. Because in this country, walking 20 miles isn't a choice. It's a sentence. A death march with coyotes circling, their yips carrying on the wind as you stumble forward, your boots blistering, your lips cracking, the horizon refusing to come any closer. When you finally mount, you feel the sores beginning on yourself too. The saddle is stiff, the stirrups never quite even, the leather edges pressing against your thighs. After an hour, your backside feels like it's been beaten with a shovel. After 3, you're numb. After 6, you know the word saddle sore in your bones. You shift, you squirm, you try to relieve the pressure, but it doesn't matter. The saddle wins. It always wins. Every cowboy walks bow-legged, not for swagger, but because his body is moulded by pain. The horse moves under you, muscles rippling, and you realize this animal is smarter than you gave it credit for. It knows the trail, it senses danger, it hears things long before your ears catch the sound. Coyotes, snakes, distant hoofbeats, all noticed first by the flick of your horse's ears. You depend on that instinct, but the horse depends on you too, and this is where the liability part comes in. Because hoof care isn't optional. A stone lodged in the hoof can turn into an infection. A split shoe means agony with every step. Forget to check, and your horse will slow, stumble, then stop, sides heaving, sweat darkening its hide. And then you're stuck. No horse means no distance. No distance means no water, no food, no escape. Coyotes follow limping men. Buzzards circle long before you fall. Out here, a man without a horse isn't a man at all. He's a meal waiting to happen. Horses also have minds of their own. Miss a cue, pull the reins wrong, and you'll find yourself bolting toward a gully or spinning in circles until you're dizzy. A spooked horse doesn't care about your plans. A rattler shakes, and suddenly you're clinging for life as the beast bucks and rears, determined to throw you. A gunshot cracks, and the animal lunges, galloping blindly, carrying you miles before you regain control if you're lucky enough not to be thrown. Every ride is a negotiation, a fragile agreement between your will and its instinct. You glance down at the saddle horn, polished smooth from countless grips. That horn isn't decorative. It's the only thing that keeps you from flying when the horse jumps sideways, the only anchor when you lunge to rope cattle or hang on during a stampede. You'll clutch it until your knuckles go white, until the leather creaks, until your whole body aches from the strain. And still, the horse may decide it doesn't care. Out here, you're not in charge. You're just a passenger trying to convince the pilot not to eject you. Every cowboy's stories circle back to the horse. Tales of crossing deserts where the canteens ran dry but the horse still carried him to a spring. Stories of horses that sensed a rattler coiled in the path and stopped short, saving lives. But just as many tales end darker men who trusted their mounts too much, who rode them to exhaustion, only to find themselves alone, miles from anywhere, as their companion collapsed in the dirt and never rose again. They buried the horse, then lay down beside it, too weak to walk on, waiting for the sun or the wolves to finish the job. And you feel it yourself as the day wears on. Every step the horse takes is another roll of the dice. If it holds steady, if you've cinched it right, if you've cared for its hooves, if no snake spooks it and no storm lashes it, then you live. If not, you're meat in the desert. That's the razor edge you ride. The horse isn't just your transport. It's your lifeline, your fragile insurance policy against the emptiness of the West. But survival out here isn't just about nature or hunger. It's about people. And in the Wild West, people are just as dangerous as rattlesnakes, maybe more so. They've got their own code. And that code is written in bullets. You step into town, boots clomping on warped boards, dust swirling at your ankles. The street looks quiet at first, but you know better. Men lean against posts, arms folded. Women glance from doorways, eyes sharp. Everyone is watching everyone. Out here, watching is survival. But watching too long, that's a mistake. Because in this place, eye contact isn't innocent. A stare can feel like a challenge, and challenges get answered with steel. The movies taught you about duels at high noon. Two men squaring off, dramatic music swelling, the street cleared out like a stage. Forget that. Reality is uglier, faster, messier. Nobody waits until the clock strikes 12 to air a grievance. If a man feels disrespected at breakfast, you'll be dead before the beans cool. Disputes happen in the mud, in the saloon, in the alleys, over spilled whiskey or a muttered word. Nobody polishes their boots for a duel. They pull their iron when tempers snap, and most shots aren't aimed, they're flinched, wild, panicked. That's why so many bullets hit the walls, the windows, or bystanders instead of their targets. The etiquette of survival is invisible, but everyone feels it. Don't stare. Don't shoulder bump in the doorway. Don't linger too close at the bar. Don't cut a man off when he's speaking. And never ever laugh too loudly when the wrong person's in earshot. The West is full of men who worked cattle drives for months on end, sleeping in dust, eating beans, surrounded by other men who smelled just as bad. They arrive in town wired tight, aching for a drink, a game, or a woman. Their nerves are raw, their tempers short. You, newcomer, walking in with city habits too polite, too stiff, too curious, are already half an offence waiting to happen. You think it's silly, all this tension over nothing, until you see it. A man leans too long on another man's chair in the saloon, just resting a boot. The seated man stiffens, voice low, sharp as a blade. Move! The other lingers half a beat too long. Suddenly hands twitch at belts, cards scatter, chairs scrape. The air thickens with the smell of whiskey and gun oil. You freeze, heart hammering. One wrong word and this room turns into a slaughterhouse. And then, just as fast, the boot lifts, the man grunts, and the storm passes. You realize everyone in the room had been ready to kill. And then there's the hat rule. It sounds ridiculous until you're here, until you see how sacred it is. A hat isn't just a hat. It's shade, it's shelter, it's identity. It's the one possession a man guards like a piece of himself. Dust can ruin your lungs, sun can split your skull, but a good hat keeps you alive. Which is why touching another man's hat is as close to suicide as you can get without pulling your own trigger. Brushing it, knocking it off, joking about it, any of that can spiral into bloodshed. You learn fast. If a hat falls, don't touch it. Let the owner pick it up. Offer to hand it back, and you might hand back a death sentence. You sit in the saloon, fingers tight around a glass of whiskey you can't afford, and you practice the art of invisibility. Eyes down, posture neutral, voice low. Laugh only when others laugh. Don't move too quick, don't stand too tall, because out here, standing out is a liability. Men are twitchy, wired, hungry for reasons to prove themselves. Maybe it's the booze, maybe it's the boredom, maybe it's the way survival breeds suspicion. Whatever it is, you learn fast that the West is a tinderbox, and you don't want to be the spark. You remember a story someone told you, whispered over campfire smoke. A drifter walked into Dodge City, whistling to himself. A harmless tune, but one man at the bar thought it was mocking him. He drew. The drifter fell dead in the doorway, the tune unfinished. That's how thin the line is. That's how sharp the etiquette cuts. Even lawmen know better than to push too hard. A sheriff can pin on a star, but it doesn't make him invincible. He has to navigate the same rules, careful not to humiliate men who'd rather die than lose face. The badge only works if the townsfolk agree to respect it, and that respect can vanish if the sheriff misreads a moment, insults the wrong man, or touches the wrong hat. You realize, slowly, that survival out here isn't about being the fastest draw or the toughest fighter. It's about understanding the code. A crooked, unspoken, code where insults are lethal and restraint is rare. You can't swagger through town with your chest out unless you're willing to prove it in blood. And if you can't, then you learn humility fast. The longer you stay, the more you see how much of the West runs on this hair-trigger tension. A cattle deal sealed or broken over a handshake that lasts a beat too long. A poker game ending in gunfire because someone's smile looked smug. A stranger shot in the back for looking funny at the wrong man's woman. You think you can predict it, but you can't. Every step, every glance, every gesture is a gamble, and the stakes are your life. By the time you leave the saloon, the weight of it has sunk into your bones. You walk carefully, measuring your stride. You keep your eyes low, not submissive, but careful. You let men pass first. You step wide around strangers, and you treat hats like holy relics. You don't relax. You don't exhale. Because you know that at any moment, in any room, with no warning at all, someone could decide your last look, your last word, your last mistake is worth killing you for. And that's the truth the stories never told you. The Wild West isn't about grand showdowns or noble duels. It's about living every second like you're stepping barefoot across a floor of glass. Careful, measured, quiet, because everyone here has a gun, everyone here has a temper, and everyone here has something to prove. So you move on, cautious, tongue dry, eyes tired. The etiquette of survival out here isn't written down anywhere, but it's carved into your nerves. And as you ride out of town, spurs jingling softly, you know one thing for certain. You don't need a clock to tell you when danger comes. Out here, danger is all day, every day, and you're one wrong glance away from being its next example. Because out here, the law isn't what you think. Law in the Wild West is a rumour, a suggestion, a tired man with a star on his vest and not nearly enough hands to keep the peace. You step into the street, the boards groaning beneath your boots, and you notice the sheriff's office. It's nothing grand, just a squat wooden building with a crooked sign, a door that doesn't quite shut, and a single barred window where the jail cell waits. You imagine the lawman inside, hat tipped low, boots kicked up, maybe half asleep. But the truth is, he isn't lazy. He's overworked. The sheriff is one man tasked with keeping order in a town bursting at the seams. Drifters, cowhands fresh off the trail, gamblers, outlaws, peddlers, miners, all crammed together in one dusty main street. Fights break out over cards, knives flash in alleys, guns bark in the saloon. And the sheriff? He's supposed to stop it all with nothing more than his badge, his revolver, and his reputation. And sometimes there isn't even a sheriff. Sometimes it's a marshal, part-time, maybe appointed last month when the old one got shot, or just up and left. The town hands him a tin star, maybe a gun if he doesn't already own one, and says, "Keep order." But what does order mean? Stop the drunks from brawling? Keep the cattlemen from tearing down fences? Make sure the saloon owners don't cheat the miners too openly? Nobody agrees. Everyone wants the lawman on their side, and nobody wants him meddling when they're the ones bending the rules. So he does what he can, which usually isn't much. You watch him walk down the street, hat brim low, one hand hovering near his pistol, the other tipping at women passing by. He moves with caution, not swagger. He knows his limits. He knows that for every man he can face, there are 5 more watching, waiting to see if he pushes too hard. Out here, the law is fragile. One wrong arrest, one insult to the wrong rancher, one confrontation with the wrong gang, and the sheriff's body ends up face down in the dust while the town shrugs and carries on. Lawmen die often in this place. It isn't a badge of honor, so much as a death sentence with a delay. So you'd think people would respect the process of justice. Courts, trials, hearings. But courts are slow. They're far away, often days of travel to the nearest judge. Cases pile up, evidence is shaky, witnesses vanish, and the people hot, restless, furious don't want to wait. A theft today, a trial 6 months from now, no one accepts that. Not when tempers are boiling, not when fear is sharp. And so, the mob steps in. You see it happen one evening, the light fading, the saloon still noisy behind you. A ranch hand accuses a drifter of stealing a horse. Just an accusation, nothing proven. The sheriff tries to calm things down, telling them he'll sort it out in the morning. But the crowd isn't interested in mourning. They're already gathering, men with faces red from whiskey, women whispering from porches, kids wide-eyed. Rope appears faster than paper. Someone shouts, "Hang him!" and the mob surges like a tide. The sheriff shouts, threatens, even pulls his revolver, but he's one man and they're a town. They drag the drifter to the nearest tree, loop the rope, and in minutes it's done. Justice, fast and final. It doesn't matter if the drifter was guilty. Out here, the appearance of guilt is enough. Rumours spread faster than horses run, and once the crowd believes, the truth no longer matters. Justice arrives on the mob's timetable, not the court's. You watch the sheriff holster his gun, shoulders slumped, face hard. He couldn't stop it. He never really could. He's the law on paper, but the mob is the law in practice. And the mob doesn't only punish strangers. Sometimes it turns on neighbours. A man accused of cheating at cards, a woman whispered about in connection with a married man, a rancher blamed for rustling when cattle go missing. Once the rumour spreads, once the crowd builds, it doesn't take much. A torch, a rope, a shove. Out here, fear fuels, violence, and once it starts, it doesn't stop. You think about appealing to the law if something goes wrong for you. Maybe you're cheated. Maybe you're robbed. But what happens when you walk into the sheriff's office? He looks up from his desk, eyes rimmed with red, and asks, "Any witnesses?" You shake your head. He sighs. No witnesses, no case. Even if you had witnesses, would they testify? Not likely. People don't stick their necks out for strangers. They'll shake their heads, mutter about how unfortunate it is, and then walk away. Out here, justice isn't blind. It's just busy, tired, and more interested in survival than fairness. The only real law is reputation. If you're known as tough, people think twice before crossing you. If you're known as weak, you're prey. The sheriff's badge helps, but it's his reputation that keeps him alive. The mob's rope keeps the town afraid. And you? You're caught between the two, hoping you never make the kind of mistake that lands you in either set of hands. At night, lying on your straw tick in the bunkhouse, you hear the distant sounds. Sometimes it's a gunshot, sharp in the dark. Sometimes it's voices, angry and rising, the stomp of boots, the creak of rope. You roll over, pull the blanket tight, and remind yourself not to get involved. Out here, justice is a fire. You touch it, you burn. Better to keep quiet, keep small, and hope it doesn't notice you. And in the morning, the sun rises on a town that pretends nothing happened. The sheriff polishes his star, the saloon sweeps out its sawdust, and the townsfolk go about their chores. The drifter who swung from the tree, gone, forgotten, buried shallow outside the cemetery fence. Life moves on. The law doesn't linger, neither does the mob. Both vanish into dust as quickly as they came, leaving you to wonder what side you'll end up on if your luck runs out. That's the West. The law is slow. The mob is fast. And neither cares if you're innocent. They care if you're convenient. And in a place like this, convenience kills more than guilt ever did. You've made it past the sheriff, you've sidestepped the mob, and now your boots are carrying you into a place that promises warmth, light, and company. But out here, a saloon isn't comfort. It's a trap. You hear it before you see it. Piano keys tinkling a jaunty tune, laughter that's a little too sharp, voices raised in argument, boots stomping against wood. You push through the swinging doors, and the smell hits first. Whiskey, stale beer, tobacco smoke so thick it makes your eyes water. Sweat from men packed shoulder to shoulder, and underneath it all, the faint sour tang of spilled liquor soaking into the floorboards for years. The light is dim, kerosene lamps flickering yellow, casting shadows that dance along the warped walls. The piano man hunches over his instrument, fingers quick, but you notice something. He doesn't play when tempers flare. He knows better than to provide a soundtrack for violence. He pauses just long enough for chairs to scrape, voices to rise, and then, once the shouting subsides, he strikes up again like nothing happened. That's his survival trick. You head for the bar, boots thudding. The counter is scarred, the wood blackened from years of elbows, spilt drinks, and the occasional knife carved deep in frustration. The bartender looks up with tired eyes, polishing a glass with a rag that hasn't been cleaned since last spring. You ask for whiskey. He pours a shot of something that burns your nose before it even reaches your lips. You brace yourself and swallow. It tastes like fire, kerosene mixed with sweat, but it does the job. Your chest warms, your head spins, and the tension in your shoulders loosens just a notch. You think maybe, just maybe, this isn't so bad. But whiskey's the bait. The trap waits at the tables, faro layouts painted on felt, poker chips clattering, dice rolling across wood. Men crowd around, shoving, cheering, cursing. The games promise quick money, but they're as honest as a fox in a henhouse. Cards are marked, dice are loaded, dealers work with partners. Maybe you win a hand or two, enough to feel lucky. Then the trap springs. Your luck turns, the dealer's smile tightens, and suddenly your money's gone. You protest, maybe just a little too loudly, and that's when the air shifts. Chairs scrape, hands hover near holsters. The dealer doesn't need to explain. The saloon runs on its own law, and the law is simple. The house always wins, and if you don't like it, the door is that way. If you're smart, you swallow your pride and walk away lighter. If you're not, you argue. Maybe you slam your palm on the table, accuse them of cheating. Maybe you think you've got justice on your side. But in here, justice isn't worth the breath it takes to say it. A man who argues with the dealer ends up on the floor, teeth knocked out, ribs cracked. Sometimes worse. The saloon isn't a court, it's an arena. The minute you step in, you accept the rules, and the rules are rigged. Every corner hides a trap of its own. The women move through the haze in bright dresses, painted faces, practiced smiles. They laugh at your jokes, lean just close enough for you to feel wanted. For a moment, you forget the dust, the loneliness, the danger outside. You buy another drink, then another, then maybe pay for company upstairs. But nothing is free. Your wallet empties quicker than your glass, and when you stagger out in the morning, you're poorer, hungrier, and sometimes missing more than money. Plenty of men have woken up lighter by a pocket watch, a revolver, or even their boots. The saloon giveth, the saloon taketh away. Fights break out with regularity, sparked by nothing at all. A shoulder bump, a spilled drink, a laugh heard wrong. Suddenly chairs are flying, bottles shattering, fists swinging. The piano man stops playing and ducks. You press against the wall as two men tumble past, one clutching the other's shirt, both red-faced and cursing. A chair splinters across someone's back, a revolver clears leather, and the room freezes. Nobody breathes. Then the gun goes off, smoke curling through the haze, and someone hits the floor. Maybe they're dead, maybe they're just wounded. Doesn't matter. The bartender keeps polishing. The dealer keeps dealing. The piano starts up again when it feels safe. In the West, death in the saloon isn't shocking. It's background noise. The real trap is how normal it starts to feel. You tell yourself you'll just stop in for one drink, maybe to warm up, maybe to hear the piano. But the saloon pulls at you. It's the only light on the street after dark, the only place where voices rise above whispers, the only room where laughter sounds like relief. You think you're in control, that you can dip in and out. But every visit costs you something. Money, time, dignity, maybe a tooth, maybe a piece of your hide. The saloon is designed to take, not give. And men know it, but they walk through the doors anyway, like moths circling a lamp that's burning them alive. You see men stumble out into the night, pockets turned inside out, faces bruised, shirts torn. Some never come out at all, carried instead by friends or strangers, stiff and silent. The sheriff knows better than to ask questions. Death in a saloon fight is hardly newsworthy. Out here it's Tuesday. The undertaker profits as much as the dealer. You sit nursing your drink, eyes heavy, body sore, and you realize you're caught too. The saloon doesn't just trap men with cards and whiskey, it traps them with the promise of escape. For a few hours, you forget the dust storms, the empty stomach, the long rides, the cruel sun. The saloon is a trap because it convinces you it's a refuge. But it isn't. It's a whirlpool. Step inside and it pulls you down, spinning you until you can't see the surface. By the time you realize, you're already drowning. And yet tomorrow night, the lamps will flicker, the piano will tinkle, the whiskey will burn, and the doors will swing again. And men will file in, tired, desperate, hoping this time will be different. It never is. The saloon doesn't change. Only the faces do. And you, if you're not careful, will be one of them. Now, you've stepped out of the saloon with your money lighter, your pride dented, and maybe your ribs sore. But the dangers of the West don't stop with cards and whiskey. They lurk in the alleys, behind quick smiles, and in bottles of miracle medicine that promise more than they deliver. Out here, the thieves don't always come with guns. Sometimes they come with charm. The first kind you meet are the pickpockets. You don't expect them in a place like this. You think of pickpockets as creatures of crowded city streets, darting hands in top hats and tailcoats. But frontier towns attract the same breed, just hungrier and dirtier. You feel them before you see them, the sudden jostle as you walk the boardwalk, the brush of a shoulder too close. You check your belt and realize your coin pouch feels lighter. Look behind you, and there's a kid, no older than 12, already darting into the alley with the speed of a rabbit. You want to chase, but your boots sink in the mud and the crowd closes in. The boy vanishes into the maze of shacks, and your silver's gone with him. Out here, even children are survivalists, and they don't mind learning it at your expense. Then there are the claim jumpers. Maybe you've staked a little plot in the hills, scratching for gold, dreaming of fortune. You hammer your wooden posts into the dirt, drive your marker deep, and think you've secured your stake. But paper doesn't mean much out here, and men hungrier than you prowl the hills, watching. You leave your camp for water or a day's supplies, and when you return, strangers are crouched over your claim, picks swinging, pans rattling. You shout, you wave your papers, you insist it's yours. They laugh. Maybe they draw their pistols. Maybe they just keep digging, eyes daring you to try and stop them. You could appeal to the law, but you already know what happens. The sheriff shrugs. The judge is 3 towns away, and by the time anyone listens, the gold is gone. A claim is only as strong as your ability to defend it, and unless you've got a crew or a rifle and the guts to use it, you don't have much. But the slickest trap of all comes bottled and corked. Patent medicines, they call them. Bright labels, fancy names, travelling salesmen with booming voices and broad grins. They stand on wagons in the middle of town, waving bottles filled with amber liquid that catches the light just so. Dr. Farnsworth's Universal Elixir, they shout. Cures fever, chills, ague, dyspepsia, melancholy, baldness, lameness, toothache, and heartbreak. The crowd gathers, drawn by the show. They watch as the salesman uncorks a bottle, drinks deep, then leaps around like a man possessed, swearing he hasn't felt this spry in years. The people cheer, coins clink into his hand, bottles vanish into waiting palms. And you? You take one too, thinking maybe it'll cure the cough that's been clawing your chest since last winter. That night you swallow a spoonful. It burns going down, hotter even than the whiskey from the saloon. Your vision swims, your heart races, and for a few minutes you do feel better, stronger, lighter, even giddy. But the truth comes later. Your stomach twists, sweat beads on your skin, your head pounds. You realize the elixir isn't medicine at all. It's mostly alcohol, maybe some opium, maybe turpentine or kerosene mixed in for good measure. Enough to numb you, enough to make you think something's happening. But it isn't curing you. It's eating you alive. By morning, you're no better off than before, and your coin is gone. The salesman? Already miles down the road, wagon rattling, bottles ready for the next town. And it isn't just elixirs. There are powders for your teeth that strip the enamel, tonics for your hair that leave your scalp raw, pills that promise strength but deliver only stomach cramps. In a world without regulation, every bottle is a gamble. You might get lucky and find a mixture of herbs that helps a little. More likely, you're paying for poison with a pretty label. The scams don't stop there. A man sidles up in the saloon, whispers about a gold strike just over the ridge. He offers to sell you a map, a sure thing, just $50. You buy it, desperate for luck, and by the time you realize it's nothing but scribbles on cheap paper, he's long gone. Another man offers land deeds rich pasture, flowing streams. You sign, you pay, and when you arrive, you find nothing but rocks and weeds, with 3 other families waving deeds just like yours. Fraud spreads as fast as gossip, and once you've been taken, there's no one to save you. That's the cruelest truth of the West. Guns and rattlers you can see, weather you can feel. But the cheats, the pickpockets, the claim jumpers, the patent salesmen, they steal without firing a shot. They rob with smiles and promises, leaving you poorer, weaker, sometimes sicker than before. And they know you won't catch them. Out here, law rides too slow. Justice never makes it in time. So you sit outside your shack at night, staring at the horizon, pockets empty, tongue bitter from cheap medicine, and you understand. In the Wild West, survival isn't only about bullets or dust storms. It's about recognizing the trap when it looks friendly, about keeping your hands tight on your money, your eyes sharp in the crowd, your trust chained and locked. Because out here, everyone's carrying something heavy, a gun, a grudge, or a con. And if you're not careful, you'll find yourself carrying nothing at all. Always wild, knowing someone in New York is nodding off while someone in Melbourne is just waking up. Now, so far you've survived the saloon, the scams, the mob, and the weather. But even if you dodge the bullets and outwit the cons, the West will break you another way. Work. Out here, nothing comes easy. The land is too wide, the sun too hot, the dirt too stubborn. Every job that keeps you alive demands a piece of you, and it always takes more than you thought you had. Cowboys, miners, railroad men, each life is a grindstone, and sooner or later it wears you down. Picture yourself a cowboy first. It sounds romantic. Open plains, endless skies, freedom on horseback. But in reality, it's bone-deep exhaustion. Days start before dawn. You roll out of a bedroll stiff and sore, saddle your horse in the grey light, and ride herd. Cattle don't move neat and tidy. They scatter, they spook, they wander off, and your job is to keep them together, mile after mile, under a sun that scorches the skin off your neck. Dust coats your tongue, your lungs ache, and you choke down beans and salt pork that taste like regret. Nights aren't rest either. You take turns on watch, circling the herd in darkness, singing low to calm the animals. And when a stampede breaks out, maybe from thunder, maybe from a rattler, you're jolted awake, scrambling into the saddle, chasing thousands of pounds of beef thundering into the dark. One wrong move, one stumble, and you're trampled into dust. Then there are the sores, the blisters, the endless saddle rub until you can barely walk. The monotony cracks men too. Weeks without a woman's voice, without a clean shirt, without anything but the bawl of cattle and the cough of trail dust. Cowboys look free, but they're chained to the herd, and every link is made of sweat and hunger. Or maybe you fancy yourself a miner, riches in the hills, gold dust in the streams, silver veins waiting to be struck. But the mine isn't a fortune, it's a grave, with your name half carved already. You rise in the chill, pick in hand, lantern strapped, and descend into tunnels cut deep into the earth. The air is damp, heavy, full of dust that clogs your throat. You swing a pick for hours, muscles screaming, sweat stinging your eyes, hoping for a glint of metal that almost never comes. Every creak of timber above you is a warning, every drip of water a sign of shifting stone. Cave-ins happen without warning. 1 second you're working, the next you're buried alive. And if the mine doesn't crush you, it poisons you. Black damp creeps in, a mix of gases that robs you of breath before you even realize. Your lungs fill with dust until every cough rattles like death knocking. Mercury in the pans, lead in the veins, chemicals leach into your body, slow and merciless. The work eats men from the inside out, leaving them bent, wheezing, grey long before their years. But maybe the railroad calls to you instead. Big pay, steady work, building the line that will stitch the West together. You join the crews hammering rails across plains and blasting through mountains. The sound is endless iron clanging, steam hissing, dynamite booming. You swing a hammer until your arms shake, drive spikes until your hands split. The sun beats down, the dust blinds, the heat bakes. When dynamite misfires, men vanish in smoke and stone. When boilers burst, scalding steam sears flesh. And the railroad bosses don't wait for grief. The line must move. Bodies are buried shallow, tools handed to the next man, work resuming before the dirt settles. Meals are rough hardtack, beans, salt meat. Sleep is shorter than the workday, and danger isn't just from the job. Camps are full of tempers, rival crews, drunken fights. Sometimes it's bullets, sometimes knives, sometimes just fists until someone doesn't get up again. Every kind of work here carries its own misery. Even the so-called easier jobs, bartenders, cooks, merchants, aren't safe. Bartenders break up fights until they catch stray bullets. Cooks labour over fires that blister skin, breathing smoke all day. Merchants get robbed, sometimes shot, for the coins in their till. No one is spared, and through it all, there's no safety net. You get sick, you get hurt, you slow down, you're finished. No compensation, no pension, no mercy. You can't work, you don't eat. Out here, a man is worth only what his back, his hands, his lungs can endure. When those fail, he's tossed aside, another name forgotten in the dust. That's why the cemeteries grow faster than the towns. Wooden markers tilt in rows, names fading in the sun, dates barely stretch past 30. Men who came chasing fortune, freedom, or just a wage. Men broken by cattle, crushed by rock, blasted by dynamite, burned by steam. Men whose hands built the West, but whose bodies never left it. And you, standing in the middle of it, realize the real trap. The Wild West doesn't just threaten you with outlaws or storms, it grinds you down with work that never ends, never forgives, never lets up. You might survive the saloon, dodge the con men, and ride out the weather. But every swing of the pick, every hammer on the spike, every mile of cattle trail carves another piece off you, and the West never gives those pieces back. But what happens when the worst does happen, when the stampede tramples you, the mine buries you halfway, the poker game leaves you with a knife in your ribs? In the West, you can't count on healing. You can only count on pain. Medicine here isn't mercy. It's saw and prayer. You start by realizing just how fragile you are in a place like this. A splinter on the rail, a rusty nail in the boardwalk, a slip with the hatchet while chopping wood, all things you wouldn't think twice about today, can kill you here. Infection doesn't announce itself politely. It swells red, throbs hot, streaks up your arm, fever follows, sweat soaking your shirt, shivers, rattling your bones, even under blankets. And without antibiotics, because those are still decades away, you're at the mercy of your body's luck. Some men fight it off, others don't. A scratch becomes sepsis, and sepsis means the undertaker is measuring you before the preacher even hears your name. If you're unlucky enough to break a bone, it's no better. A misstep off a wagon wheel, a tumble from your horse, a cave-in underground, the crack is sharp, the pain sharp enough to make you faint. And then comes the doctor, if you can call him that. He isn't a surgeon in the modern sense. He's a man with a bag of crude tools, some morphine if he's rich, laudanum if he's not, and whiskey always. You bite down on a leather strap, or on a stick, or on your own tongue, while he pulls, twists, yanks, trying to set the bone straight. No x-rays, no sterile gloves, no clean operating theatre, just sweat, curses, and splinters of bone sticking where they shouldn't. And if that bone is too far gone, if the leg is mangled by a wagon wheel or crushed under rock, then you hear the dreaded words. Amputation. That's the Wild West solution. No reconstructive surgery, no delicate procedures. Just cut it off. A saw, not a gleaming surgical instrument, but often a carpenter's tool set against your flesh. Assistants hold you down while you scream into the floorboards. Whiskey dulls the edge, but never enough. The saw screeches through bone, blood splatters, and the doctor works fast because he knows the longer it takes, the less chance you'll live. A red-hot iron cauterizes the stump. You pass out. If you're lucky, you wake up minus a limb. If you're unlucky, infection follows anyway, and the pain was just a prelude to the grave. Gunshot wounds are common, of course. The West hums with lead, and sometimes you end up catching it. A bullet in the arm or leg might be survivable if they can find it. Dig it out with forceps or fingers, pack the wound with cloth, and pray. A bullet in the chest or gut? That's a death sentence more often than not. The doctor might poke around, trying to fish out the lead, but all he's really doing is adding more dirt, more infection. You lie on a rough cot, blood soaking your shirt, flies buzzing, and you know what's coming. Death isn't dramatic, no noble last words, it's slow, groaning, delirious, until finally you fall silent. And childbirth, the frontier is merciless for women. Midwives help where they can, boiling water, offering herbs, but complications are constant. Breech births, hemorrhages, infections from unwashed hands. Women die giving life, babies die being born, and the graveyard fills with tiny wooden markers beside the larger ones. A husband sits outside the cabin, hat in hand, praying to every god he knows while screams echo through the walls. Sometimes both mother and child survive, and the air feels like a miracle. More often, at least one doesn't. Then there are the remedies people believe in, half medicine, half superstition. Snake bite? Maybe they slice the wound open and suck out the venom. Sometimes it helps, sometimes it kills the man doing the sucking. Fever? Bloodletting. The doctor cuts your skin and drains your strength into a bowl, insisting the sickness will flow out with it. Stomachache? He might give you calomel, a mercury compound that rots your teeth and poisons your liver. Pain? Laudanum, a sweet syrup of opium that soothes everything until it enslaves you. Plenty of mothers gave it to crying infants to hush them at night, never realizing they were addicting their babies before they could even walk. Even the so-called cures you buy from travelling wagons are part of this nightmare. Patent medicines laced with morphine, cocaine, or alcohol offer temporary relief, but they do nothing to heal. They just mask the pain while your body rots underneath. And yet people cling to them, because what else is there? No hospitals, no nurses, no sterile rooms with white sheets. Just a wooden shack, a man with rough hands and tired eyes, and whatever bottles or blades he carries in his bag. If you live through the procedure, recovery is its own torment. No antibiotics, no painkillers beyond whiskey and laudanum. You lie on a cot, flies buzzing, sweating through fever dreams, praying the wound doesn't turn black, praying the pus doesn't thicken, praying you wake up tomorrow. Every visitor walks in expecting to say goodbye. Some do, some don't. Every scar is proof of survival, but every scar is also a reminder of how close you came to being another pine box in Boot Hill. You lie there, ribs bound after a fall, arms stitched with black thread after a barroom fight, and you understand. Out here, medicine isn't about health. It's about odds. Odds that your body is strong enough to survive what the saw and the knife and the whiskey can't fix. Odds that infection will pass you by. Odds that the bullet missed something vital. And no matter what the odds are, there's always one constant. You suffer. You scream. You writhe. You beg. And when it's over, if you're lucky enough to live, you thank God not for healing, but for survival. That's why the West is full of limps, missing fingers, empty sleeves pinned to shirts, and men who wince when storms make their old wounds ache. The living carry the cost of survival in their bodies, always. And the dead? They lie in shallow graves, marked with crosses, names misspelled, years too short. You realize the truth. The Wild West doesn't need bandits, storms, or famine to kill you. Your own body, your own bones, your own blood can betray you with the smallest accident. And when it does, there's nothing but sawdust floors, a bottle of whiskey, and a prayer to carry you through. Now, last time we talked about medicine saws, whiskey, and prayers. But the land itself has teeth too. Out here, you're not at the top of the food chain. Every time you roll out your bedroll or stick your hand in your boot, the wilderness reminds you who's really in charge. The wildlife of the West doesn't care about your story arc. It starts the moment you open your eyes. You reach for your boots where you left them by the bedroll, and that's your first mistake. Out here, you never shove your foot into a boot without checking. Because boots are warm, dark, and inviting, and every scorpion in the desert knows it. Their bodies crunch under your fingertips when you shake the leather out, tails arched, pincers clicking. Sometimes it's a fat black one, sometimes a pale little devil almost invisible against the dust. Either way, a sting means hours of burning pain, swelling that crawls up your leg, and the terrifying knowledge that no doctor within 100 miles can help you. Maybe you live, maybe you don't. But you'll learn the habit: always tap your boots out first. If it's not a scorpion, it's a rattler. The buzz is your warning, a sharp, angry rattle like beans in a dry gourd, just before the strike. You freeze, heart pounding, eyes scanning the brush until you see it. A coiled body, scales blending with the sand, diamond patterns glinting in the sun. Its tongue flickers, tasting your fear. Some men carry snakebite kits, razors to slice the wound and suction tools to draw the venom. Others trust whiskey or prayers. But none of it is certain. Out here, a rattlesnake doesn't need to kill you outright. The venom weakens, fever takes hold, infection follows. Days later, you're gone anyway, and the snake is long forgotten, basking in the same sun that baked you. Then there are the ticks, tiny, silent, patient. You don't even notice them at first. They ride your skin, dig in, and leave fevers behind. Rocky Mountain spotted fever, relapsing sickness. Things no one in town can name but everyone fears. You scratch, you curse, you slap at your legs until they're raw, but the ticks don't care. They wait in tall grass, in the hides of cattle, in the shadows of bedrolls, ready to feed on whoever passes. Out here, the smallest creatures are often the deadliest, and if the desert doesn't get you, the forests might. Black bears lumber through the trees, not the friendly cartoon kind, but massive beasts with shoulders higher than your head and claws that can rake you open like parchment. They aren't always looking for a fight, but stumble too close to a mother with cubs and you won't have time to draw. Your rifle suddenly feels small, your hands clumsy. Sometimes all you can do is play dead, pray it loses interest before you lose too much blood. And if it doesn't, the trees go quiet, and the ground drinks deep. Wolves move differently. You don't often see them, just the gleam of eyes at the edge of the firelight, the chorus of howls rolling across the hills. They're clever, patient, testing the edge of camp, waiting for weakness. A sick cow, a stray horse, or a lone rider who lingers too long in the dark. They won't rush in like fools. They'll circle, close in, tire you out. And if you fall, if your horse bolts, if you can't climb fast enough, you'll feel teeth before you ever see the shadows behind them. Coyotes are bolder, scrawny, mangy. but cunning. They slink between buildings at night, snatching chickens, dragging scraps. They'll test your nerves, creeping close to your campfire, glowing eyes just beyond the glow. Kick one, shoot one, and two more slip in the other side. They laugh in the dark high yips that sound eerily like voices mocking you. You try to ignore them, but sleep never comes easy when you hear those cries circling your bedroll. And then, of course, there are the insects. Swarms of mosquitoes that rise from stagnant water in clouds thick enough to choke you. Biting through shirts, leaving welts that itch until they bleed. Flies that land on your face, crawl into your eyes, buzz in your ears until you'd sell your soul for silence. Out here, even rest isn't restful. Nature finds you, probes you, feeds on you. Sometimes the danger comes on four legs, with hooves instead of claws. Bison still roam in parts, huge mountains of fur and horn that charge when startled. 1,000 pounds of muscle thundering down on you, your rifle too slow, your horse too panicked. They trample fences, overturn wagons, crush men under hoof. They were here before you, and they'll be here long after your marker rots in the dirt. But the most dangerous creature of all isn't the snake, the scorpion, the bear, or even the wolf. It's the human who knows how to use them. You see men who smile at you in daylight and set traps for you by night, baiting rattlers near your camp, letting ticks loose in your blankets, spreading stories of wolves near the trail to spook your horses. Outlaws use the land as a weapon. They know you fear the bite, the sting, the howl. They know your nerves are already frayed from the endless buzzing, scratching, rattling. And fear is easier to kill than flesh. You try to sleep under the stars, wrapped in your blanket, but you feel the crawl of legs that might not even be there. You imagine fangs in the dark, glowing eyes just past the fire. You roll over, press your hat low, and remind yourself that tomorrow you'll still have to face men and mobs and saloons. But tonight, it's the animals that keep you awake. Animals that don't care about your luck or your plans. They don't care if you're strong or weak, rich or poor. Out here, you're just another body, warm and edible, moving slow through their world. That's the cruelest truth of all. In the Wild West, you're not the main character. You're just meat, wandering through someone else's food chain. But out here, survival isn't just about keeping your body intact. It's about guarding something more fragile, more valuable, and sometimes more dangerous. Your reputation. Because in the Wild West, reputation is currency. The first thing you learn is that introductions aren't just small talk. They're currency exchanges. A man doesn't ask, "How are you?" He asks, "Where are you from?" And your answer sets the rate of exchange. If you say New York, you might be marked as soft, maybe rich, maybe ripe for fleecing. If you say Texas, you might get a nod of respect or a scowl, depending on what the listener thinks of Texans. Names of towns, families, even the outfits you've worked for, all of it brands you. You think you're just giving details, but out here, every word is weighed like gold dust. The same goes for your behavior. Walk into a saloon and let someone shove you aside without pushing back, and you've just declared bankruptcy. Every eye sees it. Every gambler, every drifter, every ranch hand. They size you up and tally the debt you owe to your own dignity. From that moment on, you'll be the man they push, the one they overcharge, the one they cheat without fear. But if you swing back, if you meet a stare with steel in your eyes, your credit rises. Even if you lose the fight, you gain a kind of interest. People remember that you didn't fold. and nothing is more costly than an insult. Words here cut deeper than knives because knives heal. Reputations don't. Call a man a liar, a cheat, or worse, a coward, and you'd better be ready to settle it with your fists, your gun, or your blood. Sometimes it isn't even the word itself, but the tone. Say, sir, the wrong way, with just enough drawl to make it sound mocking, and you've written a check your mouth might not be able to cash. Men die out here not for cattle, not for cards, not for gold, but for names, for pride, for the paper-thin armour of respect. It works the other way too. A reputation can shield you better than a gun. If folks believe you're quick with a revolver, men think twice before pressing you. If they've heard you once rode with a feared outfit, even if you only fetched water for them, that shadow protects you long after the truth has worn thin. Stories grow on the wind out here. A fight you barely survived becomes, in retelling, proof that you're a man not to be crossed. And the more people repeat it, the more it becomes currency in your pocket. But the currency is volatile. One slip, one rumour, and the value crashes. Maybe you froze in a fight. Maybe you backed down from a duel. Maybe you cried out in pain when the doctor sawed through your leg. Someone saw, someone told, and now your name is worth less than a counterfeit dollar. You can feel the shift in the air, the bartenders chuckle when you walk in, the gamblers smirk when you sit at the table, the sideways looks of men who once nodded with respect. Reputation here isn't just what you've done. It's what people believe you've done. And once belief turns sour, clawing it back is near impossible. Even women and children measure you by it. A mother might not let her daughter speak to you if she's heard you're a drunk. A rancher might not hire you if you're rumoured to have cheated at cards. Kids will whisper and point if you're said to have lost a fight. Every whisper chips away at you until you're hollow, walking through town with your head down, a shell of the man you were. In a land with little law, reputation is law, jury, and executioner all rolled into one. And here's the cruelest part. You don't control it. You can be brave, honest, hard-working, and still find your name ruined because some rival spread a story at the right campfire. Or because you looked at the wrong man's wife too long. Or because you lost one hand of poker too visibly. Reputation isn't truth. It's the dust storm of gossip swirling through every bunkhouse, saloon, and general store. And once it picks you up, it doesn't matter how strong you are, you'll be tossed until you break. That's why men guard their hats, their names, their tempers. A man's hat isn't just shade, it's a crown. Knock it off, and you've challenged his standing. That's why the quickest way to a fight is brushing a brim. It's not about the felt, it's about the face beneath it. A hat on the ground says a man is less than he claims to be. And in the Wild West, being seen as less is the same as being finished. So you learn to walk carefully. You learn to keep your shoulders square, your voice steady, your words measured. You learn to answer quickly when challenged, but not too quickly. Too quick looks nervous. Too slow looks weak. You learn to accept a drink when offered, even if you don't want it, because refusal might read as insult. You learn to laugh just enough at jokes, but never too hard, because too much laughter looks like fear. Every gesture is currency. Every smile, every silence, every nod. And one day, if you're lucky, your name carries weight. Men step aside when you walk in, not because of the pistol on your hip, but because of the stories swirling around you. Maybe they're true, maybe they're not. Doesn't matter. What matters is that you've built an account people are afraid to withdraw from. And if you're unlucky, your name's already worthless, and every door closes before you knock. You sit at the edge of town one evening, watching the sky burn red over the horizon, and you realize the truth. You could survive the weather, the wolves, the whiskey, even the work. But one wrong word, one slip of pride, one rumor, you can't kill those can undo you faster than any bullet. Out here, your reputation is your lifeline, your paycheck, your armor. Lose it, and you might as well be penniless, weaponless, naked. Out here, you can die as quickly from a whisper as from a gunshot. But let's step inside for a moment, into what you think is safety. Let's talk about homes. Because out here, homes are temporary. Picture yourself standing in front of your cabin. You call it a house, but really, it's rough-hewn logs stacked and sealed with mud, roofed with shakes that creak in the wind. Maybe you've got a lean-to barn for the mule, a garden patch scratched out of stubborn soil. It looks solid enough when the sun's shining, but the truth is, every board is a reminder of how fragile this life really is. Out here, permanence is an illusion. Start with fire. You split wood all day, stack it against the wall, haul it inside. You strike a match and light the hearth, thinking warmth is your friend. But the walls are dry, the roof is tinder, and the chimney spits sparks like a drunk. One ember lands wrong, and in minutes, your home is an inferno. Buckets of water do nothing. You stand in the yard, choking on smoke, watching everything you own bed, clothes, Bible, letters, collapse into flame, and by morning, there's nothing left but ash. Out here, fire eats faster than hunger. If fire doesn't take it, wind might. The West has no respect for walls. Storms sweep across the plains like armies, howling and tearing. A roof shingle becomes a kite, a wall buckles, the garden fence rips free and vanishes into the horizon. You huddle inside, praying the timbers hold while the wind claws at every seam. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. The prairie is littered with splintered beams, wreckage scattered like bones, and just like that, your home is gone, and you're back to a wagon, a tent, or nothing at all. Then there's water. Too much or not enough, it doesn't matter. Rain soaks through the roof, seeps into the mud walls until they sag and slump. Floors turn to swamp, beds to damp sacks, mold spreading like a sickness. Or maybe the rain doesn't come at all. The sun bakes the ground until cracks gape in the soil. The well runs dry, and the garden wilts into dust. Without water, a home is just a coffin you live in until you can't anymore. And you're not the only one eyeing your four walls. Outlaws see them too. A house isn't a fortress, it's a target. A door's just a thin plank against men with pistols and matches. Maybe they want food. Maybe they want your horse. Maybe they just want to show you the law doesn't reach this far. You wake in the night to pounding boots, voices shouting, rifles at your window. You can fire back if you're quick, but you're outnumbered, outgunned, and the house that once felt like shelter becomes a trap. The walls keep you in while the bullets punch through. Survive, and you'll still walk out with blood on the floorboards and fear in your bones. Sometimes the threat comes not from bandits but from neighbours. Land disputes are common, and a cabin standing on the wrong side of a creek is enough to start a feud. You find your fence posts kicked down, your garden trampled, your well poisoned. A homestead isn't just shelter, it's a stake in the ground, and men kill for stakes. Every night, you wonder if tomorrow your roof will still be standing or if smoke will mark the spot where it once was. And let's not forget the creatures. Mice chew holes in your grain sacks, rats scurry in the rafters, snakes curl under floorboards. Coyotes scratch at the walls, wolves circle the barn, bears smash through doors for a taste of bacon. You think you've built a barrier between wilderness and civilization, but the wilderness laughs. Your walls are kindling, your roof is a suggestion. Out here, nature crosses your threshold whenever it pleases. Even when the walls stay up, homes break the people inside them. The cabins are dark, cramped, smoky from the stove. Winters freeze your bones, summers bake you alive. Children cough through nights of damp air and dust. Mothers labour in corners with no help but a midwife. Fathers sit staring at the fire, wondering if they can make it one more season. The home becomes a prison of chores, sickness, and silence. That's why people move so often. They pack wagons, load what little they have, and chase rumours of better land, better weather, better luck. A man plants corn one year, buries his wife the next, sells the place the year after. A family might leave behind 3 houses in 10 years, each one abandoned to rot or burn. The West is full of skeleton homes, walls leaning, roofs sagging, weeds swallowing doorways, monuments to how temporary every promise is. So, when you step inside your cabin, or the bunkhouse, or the sod hut dug into the earth, you know better than to get comfortable. You keep your boots close, your rifle closer, your pack half ready. Because out here, homes aren't forever. They're only pauses in the storm. Borrowed time before fire, wind, water, or men take them away. You sit by the hearth one evening, listening to the wind claw at the roof, and you realize the Wild West never lets you settle. It doesn't matter how hard you work, how high you stack the logs, how wide you dig the well. Every home is temporary. Every roof is just a wager against the sky, and sooner or later, the sky always wins. Out here, the nights are loud and lonely, and they're every bit as dangerous as the daylight. You think night means peace, a chance to rest. But the first thing that hits you is the noise. The world doesn't quiet down out here. It just changes tune. Crickets chirp so loud it feels like the earth is vibrating. Coyotes yip and howl, their cries rolling across the plains in a chorus that sounds halfway between laughter and mourning. Horses shift in their corrals, hooves striking the ground, snorts breaking the darkness. A loose hinge bangs against a frame, a shutter claps in the wind, a rope creaks on a post. Every sound is magnified, stretched out by silence, turned into a threat your tired brain can't ignore. And then there's the human noise. The saloon doesn't shut its doors when the sun sets. That's when it really wakes up. Piano keys pound, boots stomp on warped floors. Voices rise in laughter, shouting. Argument, glass breaks, chairs, splinter. Someone yells, someone moans, a gunshot cracks, and for a moment the whole street goes still. You lie there, holding your breath, waiting to hear if the fight is spilling out into the dust. Sometimes it does. A body thuds against the boardwalk. Men spill out swearing. Pistols flash in the lantern light. The echoes of those shots roll across town long after the guns go silent. And you realize, even if you stay in bed, you're never safe. Bullets don't respect walls. Beyond the noise comes the loneliness. You're stretched out on a straw tick or a bedroll on hard ground, listening to the chaos outside. But inside, there's nothing. Just you, the dark, and the sound of your own breath. Maybe you're in a bunkhouse, crammed with other men, but that doesn't cure it. You hear snores, coughs, restless turning, and you still feel alone. Loneliness in the West isn't just being by yourself. It's knowing no one's coming to check on you. If fever takes you in the night, if bandits break down the door, if the cabin catches fire, You face it alone. And the dark itself has weight. Out here, there are no street lamps, no headlights, no glow from a nearby city. The dark is complete, pressing, absolute. The stars overhead blaze, but they don't light the ground. You walk outside, and the world swallows you whole. Shapes blur, shadows stretch. Every tree becomes a figure, every fence post a stranger. You think you see eyes watching. Movement in the brush, the gleam of teeth. Maybe it's an animal. Maybe it's a man. Maybe it's nothing but your mind, frayed from dust and hunger. But you never really know, and you never really stop looking over your shoulder. Even when you're inside, the night seeps in. Drafts whisper through cracks in the walls, carrying the smell of smoke or rain. Rats scurry along beams, moths flutter against the lantern, spiders crawl silently across the floor. You pull the blanket tighter, knowing there are more legs in that room than yours, and not all of them harmless. Sleep doesn't come easy when you can hear the scratching of claws, the dragging of tails, the hiss of something moving where you can't see. And if you do manage to sleep, the dreams come. Fever dreams if you're sick, restless ones if you're not. Memories of home, voices of people long gone, faces of men you saw hanging from a tree that afternoon. The West burns itself into your mind until even rest is another form of exhaustion. You wake with your heart pounding, your mouth dry, your skin damp with sweat. And outside, the coyotes are still laughing. Sometimes the loneliness drives you out of bed. You walk to the window or step onto the porch, hat pulled low, arms crossed against the cold. The night is wide and endless, stars so thick they make you dizzy, and in that moment you feel smaller than you've ever felt. The west stretches on forever plains, mountains, deserts, and you're nothing but one body, one heartbeat, one tiny flame against the dark. It doesn't matter how tough you were in daylight. At night, you feel the truth. The land doesn't care about you. It never did. So you lie back down, listening to the racket, the silence, the dark, waiting for morning, hoping nothing claws through the door, nothing crawls into your boots, nothing decides tonight is your turn. And you understand, nights out here aren't for resting, they're for enduring. And if you make it to dawn, that's survival enough. Because out here, dawn isn't relief. Dawn is a starting gun for a race you already lost. You wake before the light reaches the window, because light doesn't have to wake you, aches do. Your back is a plank. Your hips throb where the straw tick bit into bone. Your shoulders feel like you slept under a wagon wheel. Every cough from the bunkhouse, every flap of the loose shutter, every yip of coyotes slid into your dreams and settled there. When your eyes finally crack open, they're gritty, swollen, stuck together with dust and sleep. The chill that seeped through the walls at midnight never left. It just made itself at home in your bones. You lift the blanket and the air bites. Your breath fogs. Morning, the West says. Get up or get left. You sit, and the straw whispers like snakes. You swing your feet over the side and remember the boot lesson. Never blindly shove your foot where a scorpion might be waiting. You pick them up, thump the heels together, and something small and mean drops onto the floor and skitters into a crack. Welcome back to consciousness. Your socks are damp with yesterday's sweat, stiff with salt, and you pull them on anyway because dryness is a story you used to tell yourself. The long underwear clings like wet paper. The wool shirt rasps your neck as if it resents the job. You button it all by feel, fingers numb, and pull your hat on to trap what little warmth you've got left. The door sticks, then gives, and the grey outside wraps around you. The first smell is old smoke last night's cook fire turned to ash in the damp. Then manure, because the street never forgets. Then the faint sweetness of someone baking. But it's far away, behind another man's door. The boardwalk sags under your weight. Your heel catches a nail, and you curse softly because you don't have enough cursing left for loud. Water first. Always water. You cross the yard to the barrel that catches roof runoff and find a skim of ice, thin as a lie. You crack it with your knuckles, dip the tin dipper, and taste iron and roof grit. Your stomach wants gallons. Your head says sip. You sip. It isn't enough. It never is. The well rope creaks behind the general store. Someone's already pulled a bucket and is coughing between swallows. You picture the river muddy, cold, deceptive, and your insides clench. You'll need more water a dozen times before noon, and each swallow will be a decision you don't have time to make. Chores stack like cordwood, the second the sky bleaches from black to pewter. If you've got a horse, you've got work. The animal stands with its back rounded, tail flicking at a world of pests that never sleeps. You run a hand down the legs, pick out each hoof, pry a rock the size of a walnut from the frog, and try not to think about how far you'd have to walk if you missed it. The saddle blanket is still damp at the edges from yesterday's sweat. You shake dust from it and lay it smooth. Feel for burrs that would raise a sore. The saddle goes up like a punishment. The cinch pulls tight, your shoulder burns. The horse holds its breath because it knows more about knots than you do. You check it again because the ground is hard and your skull is fragile. If you're a cowhand, there's a foreman already a silhouette against the paling east, hat brim ablade. He doesn't yell. He doesn't need to. You and the others swing up stiffly, legs widening around a pain you'll never admit, and go find the herd. If you're a miner, your hands are wrapping rope around a pick handle, listening for your name on the shift list, trying to swallow down the little voice that says, "Not today, not that tunnel." If you're laying rail, the foreman's whistle pierces the cold, and the spike maul waits like a judge. If you're less lucky than all of them, you're just a pair of arms for hire, and your job will be whatever hurts most. The sun shows itself like a coin on the table, bright, deceitful. It looks warm. It isn't yet. It bounces off tin roofs and turns frost to steam that smells like rust. You squint, and the fine lines at your eyes itch with dust that never comes out. Your lips split when you smile, so you stop smiling. Across the street, the saloon doors swing on silent hinges, night's last drunks tumbling out, blinking. The piano is quiet, its strings cooling with a sad little ping. Someone sweeps glass into a neat pile, and the broom tracks look like ribs on the floor. The rumour mill starts before the coffee's hot. Men hunch over tin cups and pass information like counterfeit bills. A rider from the north with news of a busted dam. A freight wagon overdue by 2 days. A body found past the livery, pockets inside out, hat missing. The names you heard shouted in anger at midnight are spoken again, but flatter now, like numbers on a slate. You hear the sheriff walked past the tree by the creek at dawn, hat off, face set, and kept walking. Court is in the next county, next month, next never. Whatever happened last night is part of the day you're entering. The West does not separate shift 1 from shift 2. Breakfast is quick because the flies wake as fast as the men. Beans heavy with yesterday, salt pork that fights your teeth, bread with a grit crunch from flour that fell in the dirt once and never got over it. The coffee is molten and black and it peels your throat on the way down, but it's the only warmth that doesn't lie. You chew fast because chores sneer at leisure. Someone laughs too loud and 3 heads turn without amusement. You don't meet their eyes. You learned that in chapter, whatever this is, of your one bad day. By full dawn, heat has already started its climb. Your coat goes from lifeline to lead. The breeze lifts dust and lays it back down on your tongue, a second breakfast you didn't want. You pass the blacksmith and his hammer rings a metallic heartbeat into the street. He nods without stopping because iron doesn't wait. A wagon wheel leans half-built like a halo with splinters. A woman hauls water with her jaw set. The baby on her hip is quiet in the way that makes grown men uneasy. A boy chases a pig and loses, and the laughter that follows has an exhausted edge that isn't really laughter at all. You take inventory of yourself like you'd take inventory of a store shelf. 1 blister opened at the heel. 1 fingernail black from a hammer kiss. 1 bruise flowering under your ribs from last night's helpful shoulder in the saloon doorway. A headache that sits right behind the eyes like a sheriff leaning on a desk. A thirst that lays down and refuses to move. A hunger shaped like a hole rather than a need. And beneath all that, fatigue. Not sleepiness. Not tired. Fatigue. The kind that has nothing to do with beds. The kind that is a house guest who has thrown away the key. Work takes the pieces of you it marked yesterday. You ride fence, and the wire hums under your hand like a warning, posts loose in soil that didn't agree to hold them. You lead a team, and they pull like the world is uphill in every direction. You swing a pick, and each strike sends a note up your arms until your elbows sing. You hoist a barrel and your spine lights with that bright white pain that announces a debt you'll pay again tonight. You squint into glare until your eyes water and the tears just lubricate more dust into place. The sheriff moves through this like a man underwater. He tips his hat at the preacher, who says something about Sunday that sounds like a rumour. He nods to the undertaker, who has a new pine box leaning by the door as if deliveries arrive whether or not anyone signed for them. He stops 2 men from finishing a fight they started 3 months ago, and will still be starting 3 months from now. Justice, such as it is, moves at mule pace, and the town's temper rides a Mustang. You think about escape the way the body thinks about shade. Maybe you go east. Maybe you try for a different camp. Maybe you take your stake and find a creek that isn't already full of other men's panning pans. But the truth is, escape is work too, and you don't have spare work in you. So, you do the one thing the West respects. You keep moving in a straight line and try not to fall down. By mid-morning, the day is already longer than any day you remember back home. Noon is a rumour you don't want to test. The sun climbs toward it anyway. Your horse flicks an ear back at you, judging, and you apologize under your breath for everything you're about to ask. The cinch gets one more tug. The saddle creaks a threat. Your thighs burn, and your tailbone joins the chorus. Somewhere not far, a shot cracks once, just once, and the sound slides into the ordinary like a nail into a wall. Someone calls your name, not friendly, not angry, just necessary. You turn because ignoring necessity is how people get their names engraved into cedar instead of being called for supper. A chore adds itself to the chore you are already carrying. A list, once manageable, turns into a chain. You shoulder it and it bites. The world narrows to the next 5 minutes and the next 5 after that. You stop thinking in hours because hours are lies out here. Minutes tell the truth, and the truth is a long, stubborn animal that you drag behind you until one of you quits. There's a moment, brief and private, when you lean your forearms on a fence rail and let your head hang. The wood smells like sun and old sweat, and the splinters push a polite reminder into your skin. Even resting here costs. You watch dust motes hang and turn in the light, and for a second they look almost pretty. Then the wind takes them, and that's the sermon. Nothing stays. Not the cool, not the quiet, not the little spell you cast on yourself to keep from breaking. If you had a clock, it would say morning still. Your body says midnight, your mind says never, and still the day demands more. The West is greedy that way. It wants your steps and your skin and your spit and the small sounds you make when you stand with a sore back and pretend you're fine. It wants your patience at the well, your humility at the table, your nerve on the street. It wants your hat to stay on and your eyes to look down, but not too far down, and your mouth to stay shut unless somebody with a worse day than yours asks if you have something to say. It wants, and then it wants again. So, when the sun finally punches through the thin morning clouds and lays a white hand on your neck, you understand why the old men look old at 30. You understand why the cemeteries sit higher than the town and catch the best breeze. You understand why the piano player pauses before the breaking chair, why the sheriff looks past the tree, why the foreman doesn't yell. Everyone knows the same thing you just learned. Dawn doesn't start the day. Dawn announces the bill. And out here, the bill is always more than you brought. You adjust your hat, spit dust, and step off the boardwalk into the street because there's nowhere else to step. Your boots sink a little and pull free with that soft, ugly sound you know too well. The wind brings the smell of frying lard from someone else's breakfast. The iron tang from the smithy. The sweet rot of last night's mistakes. You touch the reins, check the cinch, look once left and once right and meet no one's eyes, and then you move. Because that's all there is to do, and that's the end of it really. Not the end of the day, God no, the day's hardly started. It's the end of your illusion. You thought you could survive a day out here, but the day is not a thing with a start and a stop. It's a wheel with no spokes missing, and you woke up already under it. You made it to dawn, and you're already beat. The West doesn't care. The sun climbs, the wind picks up grit, the horse stamps. Someone shouts from the far side of town for a hand and doesn't ask whose. You answer without thinking, because thinking is a luxury, and luxuries are for a different century. You put your weight into the next job, and the West takes it gladly.